Hi, welcome again to this channel. Thank you for being here. Today, the topic will be the wall of silence. So what do we mean by the wall of silence? So there's the comfortable wall of silence, if we call it that, when you're happy to be in each other's space, you're comfortable, there is silence everywhere, and you're each happy to do your own thing, but you still feel connected. But that's not really the wall of silence. That's the problem. The wall of silence, that is a problem which starts to become evident actually in the early stages. Now, I've done another video on introversion, extroversion, and you can start to see how much the other person is speaking or not speaking, which is going to signal a potential wall of silence based on introversion, extroversion. So that's one where people disconnect when the other person wants to connect. But the other wall of silence is when there's been a hurt, shock of changed behavior. And what I mean by that is that in the beginning stages, one person gives the impression that they're interested in something, or they behave in a way that seems to be to the other person that that's how they are. Unfortunately, they may not be like that further down the track. So when vulnerability is present, there is a tendency to be more open, more expressive, more in a way, kind of, trusting that what's being expressed is going to be received by the other person in the way that has been already experienced before. So what happens is if the other person is irritated or has, let's call them, not many resources in terms of energy, in terms of availability, in terms of attention span, or just feels the need to not have that type of conversation. And they may react in a way that is kind of blunt and not knowing how they're going to come across. Now, as a general rule, most women who have been shocked by someone else's behavior are male, in the way they're speaking, in the way they're reacting. They may go into freeze mode because they're shocked or hurt or both. And so the frontal part of the brain just doesn't have logic or ration. It's kind of gone offline. And they're just feeling and they're trying to understand, and they go into freeze mode. So they're not able to express, oh, what you just said hurt me. I don't understand. So it's going to take a little bit of time for that person to come out and have that conversation. In the meantime, now you have this wall of silence, this very uncomfortable, tense wall of not being able to communicate, because each person is in freeze mode, or one person is in freeze mode, and they're not able to come into the conversation because they need to self-soothe, they need to process, they need to get back into themselves. Because the other thing in therapy terms that can happen is that that level of freeze can take the other person out of their body, where they are really disassociating from the body and are not able to be able to have a normal conversation. So there's going to take time. And in the meantime, that wall of silence, that tension, can actually be perceived in a very negative way by the other person. And in fact, it can signal a big conflict. So when people are hurt, usually, and emotions are involved, it can definitely lead to conflict. So what's the solution to that? Well, if assumptions are made, the solution gets further away from you, because now we're creating a judgment against the other person. We're creating a judgment on what we thought was possible and it's no longer possible. In our own mind, we've made up that this person has just behaved in that way, so they don't want to do what I thought they wanted to do, or they don't understand me, or they're not the person that I thought they were. In fact, there's a very interesting timeline when you start dating someone in about 60 days. 60 days to 3 months, but usually just after 60 days seems to be fairly exact, that people feel more relaxed and familiar in the relationship or in the dating process, that suddenly they start to show parts of themselves that were well hidden away. And this can be a shock because you're not used to that. And you are suddenly seeing a whole dark side to a person that you thought didn't have that in them. And in fact, they showed you all of the opposite up until that point. They showed interest, they showed investment, they showed passion. So it can actually be quite a shock to someone to find out that suddenly there is not that person there. They're now looking at someone else. Who is this person? It's a big shock. So if it is possible to put away the judgment, put aside your judgments about and coming to a conclusion without really investigating the information, then you can have a conversation and arrive at some sort of understanding by being willing to be available at some point to try and understand each other and see if there is a middle ground, see if there's a way that you can understand each other's needs and how to meet those needs in a harmonious way and overcome that wall of silence and that tension and that conflict. Because ultimately, the 4 stages of communication, a lot of people talk about communication problems, but communication is just, what you're saying to the other person. Is it being received, and is it being understood in the same way that you are delivering it? So you need to make sure that if that's not possible, you get some sort of mirroring technique going, and you check in with the other person. Is this what you mean? And qualify that before you move on to, okay, that communication is going to allow you to negotiate agreements. And agreements are very specific and very well defined to meet both your needs. And if someone breaks the agreement, what happens is, without changing the agreement and notifying the other person of the fact that something's changed and I can't do that anymore, or I need to make a different time, or that doesn't work for me anymore, but we can talk about it. So that's about changing the agreement so that you're not leaving the other person wondering what happened, where you then end up with conflict. So there are ways of communicating which allows you to express your needs, but at the same time allows you to understand and be mindful of how the other person is receiving it. So I hope that helps. That's it for today. And that wall of silence is definitely one of the things you can overcome by having good communication skills and emotional intelligence, and to resolve past issues so that you know how to manage yourself in those situations is definitely a plus, because otherwise you're going to be activated, be triggered, and then things from the past are going to be put on the same spot as now, which have nothing to do with now. So please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for listening to these videos. If you have any attachment trauma, complex post-traumatic stress in childhood, very dysfunctional parenting, and you need to work on that, please get in touch. I do free strategy calls and we can discuss any of that on the call. Have a nice day. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.